The last 3 days in Canada, a 16-year-old boy stabbed to death at a Toronto subway in an unprovoked attack by a repeat offender. A father stabbed to death outside of Vancouver Starbucks with his wife and daughter present. A man stabbed on a Toronto city bus and taken to hospital. A sergeant, a police officer, killed near Trois-Rivières. A young girl shot to death in Calgary. This is part of the 32% increase in violent crime.
But if the member opposite was really serious about moving forward on keeping communities safe, he'd back our upcoming Bill 21 at third reading.
Unbelievable. He thinks that a hunter in Nunavut is responsible for the stabbings in downtown Vancouver. How ridiculous.
We appreciate that there is a concern out there amongst Canadians. There is a desire to be safe. There's a desire to feel safe.
The question was for the Prime Minister, who didn't have the guts to get up and answer.
Run away!
Did not have the guts to get up and answer it. The last 3 days in Canada. Saturday night, a 16-year-old boy stabbed to death at a Toronto subway in an unprovoked attack by a repeat offender. Sunday evening, a father stabbed to death outside of Vancouver Starbucks with his wife and daughter present. Sunday night, a man stabbed on a Toronto city bus and taken to hospital. Monday night, a sergeant, a police officer, killed near Trois-Rivières. And in the early morning of this day, a young girl shot to death in Calgary. This is part of the 32% increase in violent crime since the Prime Minister took office. Will he reverse the policies that caused it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we are, like all Canadians, deeply concerned with some of the very heinous crimes that we've seen over the past number of days. The increase in violent attacks on innocent Canadians and on those serving the public through law enforcement is extremely concerning. That's why we will continue to be there to make investments in public safety. Unlike Conservatives who cut funding for police officers, we've invested in public safety. We invested in municipal police officers as we've invested in community safety programs, as we've strengthened gun control, as we've continued to strengthen consequences for violent offenders. We will continue to be there to keep Canadians safe.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
People are tired of hearing about his concern. They want to know what he's going to do to reverse the damage he's caused. He brought in a bail system that allows repeat violent offenders back out on the street again and again, sometimes released the very same day. In Vancouver, the same 40 violent offenders were arrested 6,000 times in a year. That's 150 arrests per criminal per year as a result, a direct result of the Prime Minister's easy bail system. Will he replace bail with jail for repeat violent offenders?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we will continue to work on bail reform, including working with the provinces to ensure that we have a fair and responsible system that keeps Canadians safe right across the country. But if the member opposite was really serious about moving forward on keeping communities safe, he'd back our upcoming Bill 21 at third reading to make sure that we're keeping assault weapons out of the hands of people across this country, that we're strengthening gun control to freeze handguns, that we're continuing to move forward instead of being in the pockets of the NRA to focus on Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Unbelievable. He thinks that a hunter in Nunavut is responsible for the stabbings in downtown Vancouver. How ridiculous. Under his policy of targeting law-abiding citizens while we're allowing repeat violent offenders to go out on the street again and again, we've seen a 32% increase in violent offences. And in fact, one of the detectives close to the case in Toronto said that the offender was out again on numerous releases. Probation, prohibited bail, you name it, he's been released on it. This is a full-scale justice system failure. Will he reverse it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, amidst all this tragedy, it's interesting to see the lengths to which the Conservative leader will go to avoid talking about his desire to weaken gun control in this country, to bring assault weapons back into the communities where they were banned over the past couple of years by this government. We've put a freeze on handguns, the market across the country. We're strengthening gun control, and every step of the way, the Conservative Party stands against it, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I'm asking them, with their concerns about public safety right now, will they step up and accelerate the passage of C-21 when it comes back to this House for third reading?
Leader of the Opposition.
When we were in office, in the last year, there was 124,000 fewer violent crimes than there was last year. Violent crime, including murders, have skyrocketed under this policy of this Prime Minister. He's targeting law-abiding hunters and farmers rather than the repeat violent offenders who are committing the crime. Why won't he look at the evidence which has demonstrated that our streets have now turned into war zones after 8 years of his policy? And will he replace bail with jail for repeat violent offenders?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite himself brought up what they did under the Harper government in those years. What they did was loosen gun control laws. What they did was make it easier for people to buy assault-style weapons, and that led to direct increases in gun ownership and, unfortunately, in violent crime across the country. That's why we're trying to bring back stronger gun control legislation, despite the Conservatives' ideological opposition to gun control. We will continue to put the safety of Canadians and their communities first. We will continue with stronger gun control laws right across the country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A moment ago, I listed 4 stabbing deaths that have happened in the last 3 days, including a police officer. And the Prime Minister glibly got up and said, well, he's going to ban hunting rifles. Stabbings happen with knives, not hunting rifles. Perhaps that's why we see a 32% increase in violent crime since this Prime Minister took office. He's not looking at logic or facts. It's the criminals wielding the knives that are doing the killing. Does he really believe that banning rural hunters will stop knife crime in big cities?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Canadians deserve to feel safe, and Canadians must be able to feel safe in their communities. That's why, Mr. Speaker, on March 10th, I met with my provincial counterparts, my territorial counterparts, to work on bail reform, to include repeat violent offenders, to include crimes with knives, Mr. Speaker. We have a plan. I invite the honourable member to read the joint communique that came out of that federal-provincial territorial meeting of Justice and Public Safety Ministers, and we are moving ahead with that plan.
Excellent. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The question was for the Prime Minister, who didn't have the guts to get up and answer.
Run away!
Did not have the guts to get up and answer it. A moment ago, I listed 4 murders and near murders that happened with knives in the last 3 days. This is part of a massive crime wave that the Prime Minister's catch and release bail system has unleashed right across the country. We did not have crime like this before he took office. His solution? Ban hunting rifles in rural communities. Mr. Speaker, I ask him again, does he really believe that banning hunting rifles in rural communities will stop knife crime in downtown cities?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, we have been working with the provinces and territories with respect to bail reform since last October, Mr. Speaker. We appreciate that there is a concern out there amongst Canadians. There is a desire to be safe. There's a desire to feel safe. And that's why, Mr. Speaker,
I'm going to interrupt the Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister, please from the top, because I missed the beginning. Go ahead. I stopped it. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have been working working with provincial justice ministers, public safety ministers from the provinces and territories since last October, Mr. Speaker. We appreciate that Canadians need to feel safe, and Canadians have a right to be safe, Mr. Speaker, which is why we have been working together on bail reform to address repeat offenders, to address violent crime with knives, crime with guns, Mr. Speaker. We're moving ahead with that plan as we have stated in the joint communique. But, Mr. Speaker, this is a problem that will be solved working together.
Perfect.